I've been also looking at the things that you publish on Sticks and Stones. One of the thing, and I think you shared this on your LinkedIn as well, was your thoughts on the social media ban that's happening in the UK right now. Just a bit of background on what I'm currently doing on Digital Field Notes. Digital Field Notes is on Substack. I write about stories that humanizes a tech-saturated world. Since the start of the year, I've been running the series called An Algorithmic Becoming, where I explore how algorithms and algorithmic technologies have been so deeply entangled with our lives. My last edition, there's a lot of discussion about digital well being and the ways you go about nurturing and maintaining that well being in a more like structural way. And I
Mm.
feel like it's quite a nice flow from talking about that to talking about collective effort to protect the well being of, in this case, kids and teenagers. We've been seeing a lot of conversations around social media ban that's happening all around the world. So many countries are considering their own version of the under 16 ban that started in Australia. Yeah, I wanted to understand better what the discourse looked like in the UK. Can we maybe start with that, with maybe some background?
I feel like I've seen the trajectory of social media since the very early days. Well, I was actually working in TV, like in the 1990s, like broadcast TV. A lot of my kind of cool friends started doing little .coms and stuff. So I got interested in this thing called the internet. And then I did an MBA in e-business, electronic business, it was called. That was in 2000. This is all kind of like Web 1.0. And then I started working in like interactive TV, which was meant to be like this great kind of like two-way sort of interactive conversation between like viewers and producers. Interactive TV was a bit of a damp squib. It didn't really work. And all the kind of, that kind of interactivity really was happening online. And then Web 2.0 came around, and that was really like the social web. I actually got commissioned to write a book on Web 2.0 and how it was impacting on like leadership style. So I started writing this book in like 2004 or 5, or like researching it. And then obviously Facebook launched in 2004. Obviously before that, there was like Friends Reunited and kind of early social stuff. But anyway, the book became a book on social media because as I was researching it, that became the kind of thing that was happening. Then the book got published, actually 2009, it got published. Everyone was like, oh, like you're an expert now on social media. So, and then I ended up kind of like working in more kind of like marketing kind of agency type roles. But the book was really optimistic about social media and like, oh, everyone's going to be connected and it's going to be really great. And corporations won't be able to lie to us anymore because we
Um,
can, find the truth and speak to each other. And I feel like I've really seen like the whole trajectory of social media from the kind of utopian early days to the kind of dystopian later iterations. And I've also got a daughter who's now 19. So I feel like kind of seen it as an adult, like seen it social media develop and grow and change, but also seen my daughter grow up with it and seeing how she responds to it and how it impacts on her life and her friends' lives. And I've worked with kids as well. We had a social enterprise called Design Club where we did after school workshops for kids in design thinking, and they were making their own apps and that sort of thing, or prototyping apps. So we had a lot of discussions around social media and algorithms and manipulation and disinformation and that sort of stuff.
everyone knows the bad sides of being on social media, and there's a lot of like moral panic around it. And
Yeah.
the current ban is also very much driven by this not knowing what to do with all the harms surrounding social media. Something that you also written down in your article was the fact that 8 out of 10 people support the ban in the UK.
Yeah, there's definitely a real like a popular opinion is wants a ban. I think it's around anecdotally around 90% of parents in the government recently had a consultation like for 3 months on social media whether or not they should have a ban, and apparently 90% of parents said they wanted a ban.
Why do you
So
think it's so popular?
I think a lot of parents are scared, they're just obviously there are lots of horror stories. I think a lot of parents they want support, they want help. Like they're busy, they're working, they've got, other all their children to worry about, aged parents, I don't know, they've got other problems going on. And I guess a lot of them feel that like if the government just banned social media, then they wouldn't have those arguments with their child, about like, right, you've got to get off Snapchat now or whatever, because they'd be like, well, you're not allowed to be on it. I think there are other ways of getting kids off screens, or
Yeah.
getting kids not to spend so much time on social media, other than an outright ban.
This is happening all around the world, right? I'm kind
Yeah.
of like curious to understand the UK specific context. Do you mind like taking me back to like how conversations about the ban started in the UK? Was there a certain kind of trigger?
Well, obviously the Australian social media ban, that probably really kickstarted the conversation. But at the same time, I think there's like more widely there's this kind of like tech fatigue going on. People can see the power of the big tech companies, especially now we're getting, figures like Elon Musk getting involved in UK politics. In the UK, people feel like, oh, we don't want these outsiders telling us what to do and having any control over us. So I think there is a bit of a resistance there. People are beginning to like just kick back, and push back and just say, okay, enough's enough. But a ban is like a sledgehammer to crack a nut, right? It's too draconian, but people just feel, yeah, I just want a ban, just ban it all. It's like a knee-jerk kind of reaction. It's understandable, like emotionally, it's understandable, but practically it's
I, I
unworkable, really.
I'm just curious to know like why do people in the UK want it when they already have something like the Online Safety Act? Why do a lot of people think that's not enough?
Well, exactly. I mean, we already have the Online Safety Act, which in theory, that should bring in quite a tough regime. And, the tech companies should be fined millions of pounds if they, violate any of the sort of principles in the Online Safety Act. But it's a problem of enforcement. I guess we're not seeing it being really, really enforced. I mean, Ofcom, who are meant to like oversee like communications, that it feels like they've been relatively toothless. And then there's also a sort of on a commissioner's office as well, and they seem to be pretty ineffectual. I think the problem is the new government they almost seem like anti-regulation of tech. I don't know, they're a bit kind of schizophrenic. They talk the talk of like online safety, but then they want to do big deals with the American tech companies, and they want obviously the tech companies to come over here and invest in the UK because of economic growth. There's a bit of a sort of Jekyll and Hyde situation going on. In some ways, they're embracing tech, but I think the government is kind of this Labour government and Keir Starmer. I think they're kind of a bit out of step with what the people actually want. I don't think they've realised like how public resistance has grown or public feeling has changed. We used to be a lot more pro-American tech. I think maybe sort of, even 4 or 5 years ago. But Keir Starmer, because he's in trouble now because he's been challenged as leader of the party and as prime minister. I mean, I was reading something in the FT just like a few days ago that says he's likely to bring in a social media ban just because he's like beginning to think about his legacy,
Or
so
popularity, it's like populist regulation.
yeah, exactly. It's just catering to yeah. So he is listening in that respect. But then at the same time, he's going behind the scenes and having secretive meetings with Palantir, etc. So yeah, it's a bit hypocritical. We've got this by-election coming up next month, which is like a local election, which is really crucial for Keir Starmer. So he really wants to win that election, wants Labour to win. So he might just bring in the social media ban because that will be such a popular crowd pleaser. And also, even more importantly, he won't have to deal with the fallout. He won't have to deal with the implementation because he'll be gone.
Uh,
So if he can bring it in and everyone's like, yeah, we love him for this, and then he can run away before it becomes a problem.
you did say in your article that a ban would be unenforceable. Mind elaborating more on that sense?
Molly Russell, I think she was 15 years old, and she died by suicide after watching very unpleasant Instagram content. Well, that was partly why she died. So her father, Ian Russell, has become a campaigner for sort of online safety. And
Mm.
anyway, his foundation, the Molly Rose Foundation, which was set up in her name, they did a survey and looked at the impact of the Australian social media ban, and their survey found out that 60% of kids under 16s were still accessing the channels that were meant to be banned. I mean, this is the thing, like kids, they'll always find a way. If they want to get online, if they want to get on these channels, they're either gonna lie about their age, or they're gonna use someone else's verification method, or they're gonna access a virtual private network, or they're gonna find ways of getting online. It's so hard to enforce. It's just
Yeah.
so crazily hard to enforce. And I don't think there's any really robust method of age verification that is not only secure but is trustworthy and protects people's privacy and is reliable. There's issues with all sorts of age verification. And at the end of the day, all of us will be handing over even more data to the tech companies, the tech platforms that we're already saying are untrustworthy. It's just increasing surveillance in an already very surveillance heavy environment. Also, I'll send you a link to this. There's a journalist called James Ball, but he's a UK journalist, but he did a really good post recently about how, like, comparing social media to a public park,
Mm.
saying if we had a park around the corner in the community and it was like full of drug addicts and toxic waste and used syringes, we wouldn't just say to our kids, don't go in the park. We would campaign to have the park cleaned up. I really connect to that idea of social media, social platforms as they're like a public space, even though they're privately owned. Why should the responsibility be on us to do the enforcement? Why don't they just clean up their act?
Yeah.
Why do we have more to stress and worry about as parents trying to keep our kids offline when they're the ones making the money? They should be doing the policing themselves. That's more of an emotional argument, but yeah, I think the bottom line is it's not really enforceable. It's like a sticking plaster.
Has
So
has that narrative been effective? Have people been persuaded by that?
by this narrative of social media ban being unenforceable. No, I mean, I don't think so because most parents, just like I say, they just kind of want help. They think, well, I just need help. I don't really understand this stuff, and I want help in keeping my child off it. They see a social media ban as the easiest thing, but I think when you're a bit more when you have a bit more knowledge about the situation, you can see that it's not the easy solution. It looks like an easy solution. I was just going to say, if anything, the conversation around social media ban has gone the other way because so many parents are now saying, yes, we want a ban, and they've got that idea in their heads. That voice is, like you say, it's populism. It's just like it's a loud, simple idea. And so people just grab hold of it. But the reality is a lot more complex. People don't have time to understand the complexities. They just want some help. They
Yeah.
just want their lives to be easier. So they go for the simple solution.
But you guys
Yeah.
did have that period where you open consultancy with the public, right? The
Yeah.
UK, they had 3 month of consultation
Yeah.
period. Has anything come out of it?
Yeah, I mean, the only figure I've seen from the consultation was this someone who was involved with it reporting that 90%, no, sorry, yeah, 90% of parents who'd responded had been in favor of a outright ban. I guess if Keir Starmer's going to react to that, then he's going to say, well, that's a big win for me if I introduce the ban because 90% of parents want to see it. I think it's great they had the consultation, and in the early days, the early sort of noises coming out of the consultation were like, yeah, we'll probably stop short of a ban. We might introduce other measures, but we won't do a full ban. But I just think as time has worn on and now, Keir Starmer's leadership is in trouble, I think they're just going to go for the full ban for reasons we've discussed. So it's more of a political decision than anything.
Yeah, but I still find like the processes happening in the UK quite interesting because in Indonesia we also have the same thing, a ban for under 16, but there's no kind of consultancy work going on. It just happened out of the
Wow.
blue and yeah, it got
Oh,
enforced.
wow. That's,
Very,
yeah. Wow.
very little civic engagement.
So is social media banned now for under 16s?
I think they're starting to enforce it. Last thing I saw was they were filing a complaint with the big tech because they weren't being compliant.
I mean, I'm really here in the UK. I'm really glad that they did a public consultation. I think that was the right thing to do. I just think that whole public consultation is almost, well, like I say, if 90% of parents who responded said they wanted a ban, then I guess they can say we had a consultation. This is what parents said. I think it's good they had some kind of civic engagement. Something I think is more interesting and I'm more in favor of is a like mobile phone ban in schools. I mean, yeah, hard to enforce, but and again, putting, the emphasis on teachers to enforce it. But at least like that has been done successfully in a lot of schools. Like certainly in my daughter's school, they did it. And I mean, the kids just sort of accepted it. They weren't happy, but they just kind of got used to it. And then, what they're doing in Sweden is really interesting because they're really trying to promote sort of physical books and going back to pen and paper in schools because they feel that or they have evidence that kids learn better with a less screen heavy environment. So I think it'll
Mm.
be really interesting to see what happens there.
Is the phone-free policy in your kid's school recent? Is that something new?
In my daughter's school, well, she's 19, so she's now left school.
Oh.
But in that school, I think they always had it. When she started the school in year seven, aged 11, they already had the known phone policy in place. So they would have their phones, they would go to school and they'd be able to, text their mothers or whatever. But then once they were in school, they weren't allowed to take their phones out.
Mm.
And if they were caught with their phones out, the phone would be confiscated for I think like 3 days or something. So yeah, it seemed pretty effective.
With these kind of policies, you get to limit kids' exposure to social media content while they're in school, but when they get home, they're still exposed to harmful content if that's the
Yeah.
concerns coming from a lot of parents.
Harmful content is one concern, and obviously it's a very important concern. Another big concern, well, for me, and I think for a lot of parents and educators, is learning. How being on a screen affects your learning when you're in school. We know, it's so distracting, isn't it? Having when you're learning, if you've got your phone and you're opening Snapchat or TikTok or whatever, it's like during, obviously you and I would not do that during lectures. But, the temptation is there. And for kids, it just seems crazy. It just doesn't seem conducive. And I mean, yeah, of course they can still access stuff outside of school hours, but school hours is a big chunk of the day, and if you're keeping children safe from online harms just during that time and helping them to concentrate while they're in school, like that is going to help them in the long term. I guess I mean, I know teachers work incredibly hard and it's just another thing for them to worry about, but at least a school environment there are already quite a lot of rules and regulations in a school environment, and it has been done successfully in a lot of schools. So an environment that's a lot easier to police than the home environment. Hopefully, like more nurturing and compassionate and less full of regulations and kids. It's really good for kids to be online. A lot of stuff is really positive, right?
Yeah.
Um, and a friend of my daughter's has a like chronic health condition. She was diagnosed at 8, and for her, like I remember her telling me, like she really loved the fact she could go onto Instagram and like connect with other kids with this condition. And like whereas in the school, she'd be like the only person. It's that whole thing of like being able to connect with people who understand what you're going through, and that's a really positive thing. Plus, book talk and other there's educational stuff online as well. It's not all a cesspit.
Yeah, it's something that you cited in your blog, Dana Boyd's argument about you need to teach kids how to safely cross the digital streets. They are gonna cross at some point, so might as well
Yeah.
teach them the skills.
And you want to be having those discussions with them. And yeah, exactly. You want to be talking to them about what they're finding online and what they're doing and make that a kind of safe conversation for them to have. And if they feel that they're not allowed to go online at all, then they're not going to tell you about what's happening or less likely to tell you about what's happening. And there's a lot of talk about this cliff edge. So, okay, if we do ban kids from social media, and then what happens at 16, they're just going to go online and suddenly have this wave of unpleasant stuff coming at them and they won't know how to navigate it because they won't have learned. Poor kids, they have to learn how to cope with this stuff. And they're really savvy. And I mean, if you speak to any 13, 14-year olds, even, younger, 10, 12, 8, whatever, they still have awareness about the world and you can have an intelligent conversation with them about this stuff. Yeah, so I feel, yeah, this cliff edge thing is yeah, exactly. It's a real problem.
And I think a big myth to also look into is the fact that most kids don't go online trying to look for trouble. I think that's a lot of misconception that adults
Exactly.
have this kind of like suspicious distrust against kids and what they're doing online. Well, most of the time they're just trying to connect with other people.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, yeah, obviously, like, one thing is the intentions of the children and the teenagers, but of course, it's another thing, the intentions of the people they meet online and what they might want. But yeah, I just think everyone needs to be talking about this more, and there to be more education about this for parents as well as children. That's something schools could do again, is have, sessions with parents where they talk about how to help your kids navigate this world and what to say and what not to say. And yeah, just have simple rules as well. Maybe like no screens, at meal times. If you're lucky enough to sit down as a family and have a kitchen table where you can have a meal together. Just like don't always have your phones, or you leave your phones downstairs charging at night. Don't take them into your bedrooms. There's like lots of rules you can have as a family. But I think some parents just don't know. They don't know where to start with it all. And they're addicted to the phone themselves.
That's
So,
true. Do you
which
have
again is
any rules in your household?
yeah, both me and my daughter's dad like worked in digital. So from like the start, we were like, okay, no screens at the table, and no screens in the bedrooms. And also just like always talk about what you're seeing online, and we're always talking all the time about stuff. But that's our industry, and what we work in. It's just like, the TikTok ethnography collective or something, everyone where
Yeah,
we're talking all the time about what we see online and sharing stuff. So I guess for our daughter, it was like really easy for her to just join that conversation. I guess it is more difficult in households where the adults don't work in these fields, then maybe it's a bit harder. But just that conversation and that openness is really important. And even now, our daughter still puts her phone outside her bedroom, at night.
that's a lot of
Yeah.
self-control.
Yeah, but there's just kind of like she's just kind of grown up knowing that it's not good to have the phone in the bedroom. I mean, having said that, I have had to go and like unplug her when she's like fallen asleep watching, a Netflix movie on the iPad. So I don't know about you, but I used to fall asleep a lot and still do watching TV. Yeah.
I mean, I
I
still
don't know.
spend a lot of time scrolling before bed. That's something that I would have to admit.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, how did that make you feel? Like, did you sleep heavily after that, or were you kind of still
Not
scrolling in your sleep?
not always, not always. It's kind of like
Mm.
sometimes you just need to wind down a bit and like it helps you to think, to not think
To
just
not
scrolling
think.
down
Yeah.
your phone. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's more like a habit in some ways.
I think it's so a habit because for me, if I use my screen, if I use my phone before bed, I'm usually yeah, even if it's like just Instagram or something or scrolling, really affects my sleep. I'm really sensitive to it. I'd much rather just read, even on my
And
Kindle, rather than it's just too much. Yeah, it's too much noise for me. It's too much busyness.
that's great sleep hygiene.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't have this stuff. So, when it came very late for me. So, not so
Yeah.
late for you. Yeah.
But Jemima, if this was you, if you were a teen in this era right now, what would you feel with this whole discourse about not allowing you to be on social media?
I guess I can only really speak from my daughter's experience because, yeah, she's 19 and she says, well, for her, the idea of having anything banned is really horrific. She keeps saying, oh, I'm so glad that when I was young, there wasn't a social media ban, because for her, it's identity and connection. And it was funny the other day because we were talking about, like, when I went to university, it was obviously pre-mobile phones, pre-social media. we just I was put in the first year, I was put in halls with a group of people, and I just lived with those people for the whole time I was in university, like the year two, like sort of slight variations, but basically like the same core group. I didn't really question like my friendship group. It's literally the people I lived with, a couple of people I met on my course. That was kind of my world in university. But then for my daughter, she says when she meets people, she'll like look at their profiles, get a vibe for who they are. I mean, not only is her group of connections just so much bigger, but she'll literally like be, well, I want to hang out with that person and like, yeah, I really vibe with that person. And the way they connect online is a big part of the whole thing. And I actually said like we should sit down and watch. I don't know if you know the BBC comedy The Young Ones. You
I
know the young
don't.
ones?
No, I don't.
I
I'm
mean, because
sorry.
I so basically like my university life was like the young ones. Like it's an 80s. You should it's on BBC. It's like really famous. There's like a punk, a kind of mod, a kind of cool dude who plays golf. And a hippie, and they all live together at university, and they
Mm.
just argue all the time. And I'm like, that was what my university life was like. Like, we didn't
Oh,
have any choice of like, curated TikTok or Instagram profiles. Like, oh, I'll go for that person because they're my aesthetic. Like you would just put with people and you just got on with them, and that's how things were. But now it's the kids just find out so much through social media, and that's just like such a big part of their understanding and their world. You can argue both are best, but I mean, I think for my daughter, she'd be horrified by the idea of having to live with people that she didn't have that much in common with,
yeah. And it's
just
also
because
the
she didn't know
idea,
anything else.
yeah, and also the idea of having something being taken away from you. If you didn't have it to
Yeah,
begin with, then like,
once you have it, yeah, it's definitely, yeah, exactly. Once you have it, it's like this kind of magic thing, and yeah, you don't wanna let it go. I mean, would you give up social media? Maybe you would. I don't know if you could.
if I were a teen, like
Yeah,
this was happening. When I was still a teen, there wasn't as much of like this algorithmic feed wasn't there.
yeah,
So it was still like chronological.
mm,
It's there's still a lot of containment. So things
yeah,
spread because it's from a friend of a friend. So you get a post or a retweet back then was because your friends retweet the tweet and then it,
yeah,
it got into
yeah.
your timeline. So it's a completely different environment right now.
It's
But
more broadcast now, isn't it? It's
yeah,
much more broadcast. Yeah,
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 it gets so much more niche, I would say now than it was back then. I don't remember having exposed to so many of the discourses about the harms of social media, about, like anxiety because different beauty standards and all these conversations around why content on social media is bad. This wasn't
yeah,
in my year at the time.
yeah.
So I would find it very like weird for someone to be so restrictive when I feel like I wasn't exposed to so much harm, and it was more of an extension of your social life that you already have. At least that was the case in
Yeah.
my time.
I think that's still how kids see it. But what's interesting is I definitely have seen articles online or videos or whatever talking about how children generally, when they're asked, and like teens, whether they want a ban or not, they tend to say, we don't want a ban, but we would like help. Like
Mm.
we would like help with navigating this world. That is really what I've seen a lot of. I haven't seen any sort of headlines saying, yes, children crying out for a social media ban, because they're kind of not. Even like the Australian children they've spoken to, they seem to be saying, like, I remember reading an interview with one 15-year-old, and he was just like, this is just a waste of resources, like even trying to bring in this ban. There's exactly, there's so many other things they could spend the money on. Going back to the park analogy, maybe like, better parks for kids to play in, or there's like so many other things that this money, this enforcement, this time and effort, maybe it could be spent on other things, improving all public spaces for kids. I mean, this is another big problem for kids. They don't really have anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
They're shut up, like their lives are so monitored and restricted, and the streets are considered unsafe for them. So what else are they going to do apart from do their homework? They need places to be, whether they're online or offline. We should be looking more at those spaces rather than just like bans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're restricting their mobility in a world where so much of their mobility has already been restricted.
exactly.
I was
Yeah.
wondering what was like the theme when you were growing up. Was there a lot of distrust against society at large? Was there a lot of like stranger danger kind of narrative?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. I mean, I'm sort of Gen X, so it was all like, the Cold War and like fear of Russia and nuclear bombs, nuclear war. There was a lot of unemployment and things were being cut. When I was younger, like we just had the Thatcher government came in and they were kind of unpopular with my kind of cohort and my generation. So yeah, things sort of felt kind of bleak like they do now. Maybe
Uh,
that's just normal.
but do you feel like you get to roam around? Do you feel like you get enough
Yeah, completely.
mobility?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, we were roaming around all the time. But then I was very into my books, so I was reading a lot as well. I would always read stuff, but I was also like out on my bike and out climbing trees and stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I know. And kids don't do that so much anymore. But they find other ways. I mean, the way that they connect, like this generation, it's really amazing. They're much more in tune with each other. And maybe because of the internet and yeah, social media and all this connectivity, like they're much more like mycelium,
mm.
yeah, this network. Whereas we were more isolated. We were out in the world more, but we were still quite isolated, maybe.
As a
Yeah.
last note, Jemima, what do you think current conversations surrounding the ban is missing? Where do you think we should focus our attention more towards?
Yeah, just improving public spaces for children, whether online or offline, giving children places to be in and improving their spaces rather than cutting off their options and making them even more restricted. And like generally I'm very anti the kind of, the closing down of our public spaces and the privatization of public spaces. The conversation is just not nuanced enough and people are scared and we need to have a deeper conversation. I wish we could have a deeper conversation.
I mean, it's still going on, right? There's still
Yeah.
efforts to deepen understanding around this. Hopefully something good will come out of it.
Yeah, hopefully.
You don't seem
Hopefully.
you don't seem optimistic at all.
Well, I just think they're probably going to bring a ban in, and
Mm.
it's going to be problematic. I feel we've got so many other issues to be looking at. I just feel it's all a bit of a distraction, really. So I find it frustrating. Oh, well, it's
Oh,
been
it's
great
been
chatting to
yeah, it's
you.
been really nice to chat. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing so much.
no worries. Cool.
Okay.
Okay. Nice to
Okay.
see you, Dita.
Nice to chat with you. Take care
Yeah.
and talk soon, hopefully.
Yeah. Talk soon. Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.